Hi everybody and welcome to the What's New webinar for the latest release of Mission Control. Version 1.64 will be available on the App Exchange as of the 19th of May. So we've got a fair bit to get through, so let's jump in and take a look at what's new. Okay, so we've got a number of new features as well as some enhancements to a lot of existing functionality, and we've also got a fair few minor enhancements that we'll cover off as well. So the first new feature is a really cool functionality that will help you track the development planning of your individual roles. So the skills development plan is accessible from the role record. It allows you to carry out an assessment of the individual person, taking into consideration all of the skills that they've got. So keeping a track of the enjoyment factor they have of each skill, their proficiency within those skills, as well as allowing peers to perform an assessment of those people as well. And then you've also got the Insights tab, which gives you historical insight into the development across a number of development periods. To support that, we've also added in a skills matrix report that ultimately summarizes for each person the skills that they have, what their proficiency level is, and the enjoyment factor. So we've also provided you with the ability to mass assign skills to your roles. Now you can do that in one of two ways now. So if you're dealing with an individual role, you can do a mass assignment of skills to that particular role, or when you're creating a when you're creating a skill, you can do a mass assignment of that skill to existing roles. So we'll cover off that in a bit more detail as we go through. You also have the ability to track overtime in Mission Control. That's an existing feature. The enhancement to that is the ability to track multiple overtime rates. So, for example, you might have a field service team that are charging different overtime rates depending on when the overtime occurs. So, for example, just normal weekday overtime might be paid at one ratio. Evening work might be paid at another ratio, and then weekend work might be paid at a different one. So you've got the ability to create overtime cards, and within those overtime cards, create the multiple overtime rates, and then you can identify at an individual project level whether they are using those multiple overtime rates. And for any project that is using multiple overtime rates, when you log time against that project, you will need to specify if it is overtime, you will need to specify the overtime rate that needs to be used. So a few enhancements to the project status report. You can now define the reporting period for the time logs. You can also add custom fields to the issues page, the risks page, and the change requests page. You can also choose to include your budget items into your project status report, and you can also remove the mission control footer at the bottom of the report, as well as we've made some adjustments around when the report will stop automatically distributing as well. A few minor enhancements to the scheduler. You are now able to customize the text that appears in the bar on the actions view and the projects view. Holiday hours are now going to be factored into the hours total views, and you've also got the ability to apply some custom field filters on the role object. Again, a few enhancements to the resource assignment wizard. You've now got the ability to preset the team and skill search filters based on the values of the master team of the role that is assigned as the action owner and any skill that is defined on the action. So ultimately just making it more efficient for you to search for appropriate resources. And again, making it more efficient to assign resources. You can now mass assign contributors. So rather than having to drag one at a time over to become a contributor, you can select multiple and drag them all in one go. The timesheet has had just one enhancement, but fairly significant one, allowing you to group your entries by the time log type. So we'll cover this off during the demo, but ultimately what this allows you to do is as you're logging your time, you specify the time log type value, and then when you save the time, it will be displayed as an additional row for that particular action. So then making it easier for you throughout the week to be logging time against the correct time log type. A number of enhancements have been added to the role forecasting and hours distributor components. Updates around whether role forecast records get added to a project when it is being auto-generated. You've got the ability to optionally choose to clone your role forecasts when you're cloning a project. We've provided the ability for you to periodically delete role allocations and role actuals for historical data. So once it reaches a certain period in age, you can choose to delete that, and it's really just aimed at freeing up data storage based on information you may no longer require. You now have the ability, if you are adding hours on the hours distributor or the role forecast component to dates outside of the existing start date and end date. So if you add those hours, the start date or end date can automatically be adjusted. You've also got the ability to now either specify working days or alternatively specify an end date when you're adding a role forecast. You can also apply filters to the role forecast, and then a few other functions around being able to clear all of the values. So if you're trying to manually allocate the hours, you can quickly clear everything to 0 and then build it up as required, and then also redistribute remaining hours. So for any day that is already in the past, if the hours completed don't match the hours scheduled, you can redistribute that balance into future days. And we've just added in a quick save feature on the component, so you can save changes without having to close the component and then reopen it. And then one final one for anyone who does need to delete role allocations. Across an action milestone project, you've got the ability to now delete them in bulk for that particular record rather than having to do one at a time. So similar to how the status updates between the project milestone and action all keep each other up to date, we've added that logic in between the action and the checklist. So there's now 2 new custom settings. One will allow you to control whether the action status is updated from the checklist item statuses, and vice versa. The checklist items can be updated based on what's happened on the action. To help customers make sure that they've got their projects set up correctly based on their required billing event requirements, so whether it's manual, periodic, time and materials, retainer-based, milestone-based, we've added in a number of validation rules on the project and milestone objects, as well as adding in a suite of reports and a dashboard that will just give you insight into any projects or time logs that might have been incorrectly configured. So that will just point you in the right direction to ensure your projects are all set up correctly. So we've got a number of minor enhancements here. So on the mission control console, we've added in some additional tiles onto the launch pad and on the on the progress pad. So on the launch pad, you now have the ability to create a new holiday allowance, a new retrospective, a new purchase order, or a new rate card. And from the progress pad, you can now access the checklist board and the retrospective board. So we've added in a feature on the control pad that will allow you to turn off all of the mission control Apex triggers. So there are various Apex triggers that execute when records are inserted, updated, or deleted within mission control objects. So customers may want to be able to disable these triggers from executing in certain situations. So for example, they might be migrating data into production, they might be sandbox seeding, or potentially choosing to replace existing triggers with their own custom triggers. So to disable all of these mission control triggers from executing, there's a custom setting called Disable Mission Control Triggers. That custom setting can be found in the Project Automation Settings section of the control pad on the console. Some minor enhancements to the program planner. So the requirement card will now display the requirement ID, making it a hyperlink so it's easy to open up the requirement in a new tab. The filters modal now has the ability to apply 2 custom field filters. You can apply those filters on the program, requirement, project, or user story objects. From within the requirements modal, you have the ability to now click through on the individual user story to open that up in a new tab. And similar on the project builder, so you now have the ability to delete actions from the project builder. You also have the same update on the requirement card, so being able to click through to the requirement, and from the requirement summary modal, you can click through to open up the individual user stories. We've also added in some additional logic around the chatter comment rollup. So previously or existing functionality is when you create a post on the action or the milestone, they will roll up to the parent. So if you create a post on the action, that rolls up to the milestone, and then that rolls up to the project. Previously, the comments within those posts didn't used to roll up, and the enhancement is that now those comments will roll up. So you can comment on the action post, and that will roll up to the milestone and project. You can comment on the post from the milestone level, and that will roll up to the project as well. Action pad, we've added in some functionality that will allow you to choose whether the summary and action log sections are collapsed or expanded, and they will be persistently remembered. So you previously used to be able to collapse and expand them, but every time you came back, they would always be open. So now your settings will be persistently remembered. So if you choose to collapse the summary section and just want to use the action log, every time you come back to the action pad, those settings will be remembered. We've added hyperlinks to the project milestone and action from within the action log table, and just made a minor modification to the checklist icon, so that will now show the actual number of completed and total checklists. Similar on the issue log, we've added that collapse and expand persistent setting, and just given you access to the chatter modal from within the issue manager. On the risk log, we've also added in the collapse and expand persistent settings and added in hyperlinks to the project milestone, risk, and action. We've also made an adjustment to the ability to set the status of a record to complete. Obviously the status fields exist on the project, milestone, action, and checklist, and they're automatically updated based on the changes made to the child record. Some customers may want to prevent records from being set to complete if there are unresolved risks or issues. So there's a new setting being added to the project automation settings section of the control pad. So it's known as the disable status being set to complete if unresolved risks or issues. So if you, for example, if you have a project and you're trying to set the status of that project to complete, but there are still some unresolved risks or issues, then by using that setting, that will prevent the user from completing the project, advising them that they have unresolved risks or issues that need to be resolved before they can mark that off as complete. So that will apply to the project milestone action and checklist records. Some customers have requested the ability to know whether a project was created from scratch or if it was cloned or auto-generated, what project was used as the source. So we've added in a new field on the project object called source project, and that will be automatically populated with the project that was used to generate this new project. So that will be populated whether you're doing the creating it from a project clone, from the opportunity auto generation, or from a project request. We've added in some additional fields on the milestone object that will allow you to track anticipated milestone expenses, actual billable expenses, actual non-billable expenses, and overall actual expenses. So all of those fields have been added in and will be automatically, so the actuals will be automatically populated. The anticipated field is there for you to populate manually. So basically those fields will operate very similar as the same fields operate on the project level. They've been added in to provide more accurate reporting on the milestone P&L fields. So the P&L scheduled, P&L actual, and P&L forecast have all been updated to accommodate those expense fields, particularly around where the billing cycle, the billing type of the project has been set to fixed price plus expenses, or if it's being controlled on milestones for the individual fixed price plus expenses at the milestone level. And then finally, we've added in override fields on the milestone completion status and the project completion status. So found some customers want to be able to calculate how they've progressed in their completion percentage in a different way to the various options that come out of the box with Mission Control. So now you have the ability to just calculate your own logic and populate it into the override field, and then that will automatically take precedence over the existing milestone completion status values. Okay, so fair bit to get through there. So let's jump in and take a look at those major features. Okay, so the first feature we're going to take a look at is the skills development plan. So that's accessible from an individual role record by accessing the development plan action there on the menu. So this loads up, it gives you access to two tabs, the Assessments tab and the Insights tab. I can create a new record, I can load an existing development plan, and I can also clone an existing plan as well. So a development plan, what I'll do is first of all load an existing one. So you'll see that I've already created a number of reviews here. So I'm just going to load that one in. So what that does is I've specified, the name of the development plan. I've specified the review date, and then included any additional assessors that are going to do a peer review of this person's skills. So then as we scroll down, you'll see within the skill assessments section, it already has all of the skills that have been assigned to that person. So I can, as the individual person that is being assessed, I can carry out my own assessment. So I can specify my enjoyment factor, I can specify my role rating, as well as adding in any of my own individual comments about my assessment of myself on there. So anyone that is added as an assessor will also have their own assessor rating and assessor comments as well. So in this example, Chris is carrying out the assessment alongside me. So he's able to also go in and add his ratings and his comments. So then what we get is an average rating across all assessors. So ultimately you can have the individual role and up to 3 other assessors. So you could be taking the average of 4 different ratings there. Obviously, the idea is that you potentially review and discuss the individual ratings, the average, and then you determine an agreed rating. So, for example, in this instance, we both felt that I was a 10 on this skill, so we might agree that the agreed rating would be 10. So at that point, you can choose to update the overriding skill assignment that relates to my role record with this new agreed rating and the enjoyment factor as well. In addition to that, you can also add in some overall development plan notes. So we might agree that I will undertake particular actions over the next few months, and then when we come back and do a new review, we'll be able to assess how well I executed that plan and whether it's impacted my proficiency level. So what you can also do is add in a new skill as well. So for example, I can speak English and Spanish. It might be that I have an interest in learning a new language, which would help me perform my role as well. So whilst I don't have any proficiency at it at the moment, what we can do is load that in. So I can either create a new skill, or I'm going to go in and access French. And I'm just going to indicate that my enjoyment factor is 2, but my proficiency is super low at the moment. So when I add that in, so what that will do is add it in as an assessment row, so I can make the assessment. But what it will also do is actually it will also create the skill assignment on my role record to indicate that that's now a skill that I'm working towards. And obviously in this instance, my development plan would be about learning that. So that's looking at an existing one. Obviously I can save the changes down there or close it. I've also got the ability to create a new development plan from scratch. So if I click on the new button, so what that does is gives me a blank development plan record where I can put in the name and the date and the assessors, as well as it will load in blank entries for all of the skills. So you can see what it is pulling in is any enjoyment factors that already exist on my role record, and then I can go through and rate my proficiency as well as the assessors doing theirs as well. And then similar, I can clone an existing one. So if I want to start from the previous review and make a copy of it, I can do that. So I could say, right, I'm going to do a Q2 23 review. So let me see what notes were added in from Q1 and make a copy of, so ultimately making a deep clone of the development plan and all of the skill assessments. And then I guess the most informative part of this is the Insights tab. So the Insights tab will load for, it will preload the 5 most recent development plans for that role based on the review date. And then I can choose to group by the individual skill or by the type of skill. And there's a number of factors that I could look at. So right now it's displaying enjoyment factor. If we go into the role rating and just click go, you'll see what that does is just pre-populates the chart with the role rating. So I can see for each individual skill across each of my reviews what was actually happening, what my role rating was for each of those periods. So obviously in this instance, you can see that I've progressively improved in my proficiency of Visualforce. I've progressively improved in my proficiency of training. So that will just give you insight into are we developing this person in the right direction for the skills that they're interested in and we need for the business. So in conjunction with the skills development planning, we've also added in a skills matrix report. So what that will show you is down the left hand side, you'll see each individual skill, and across the top with each person that you have a role record for. So that will show you their proficiency value and their enjoyment factor. So where it's 0, they won't really have that skill assigned to them. So then anything that is a positive number, that will be color coded, like either red, amber, or green, depending on how high the scale is. And the color coding is mentioned in the release notes, so you understand that. But that will give you a quick overview of who has which skills, how good they are at doing those skills, but also equally importantly, how happy are they to do those skills as well. So when we've added in 2 ways of mass assigning skills to roles. So you can do that on an individual role record, and you can also do it from the skill record as well. So you can see here that I'm on a role record for Trevor. If I scroll down to my skill assignments for him, you'll see that he doesn't have any skills assigned to him at the moment. So previously I would have had to have gone through and created one at a time. Now what I can do is mass assign the skills based on the particular skill type. So for example, if I want to assign every single skill with a particular language, or that has a type of language, or every skill that is marked with a type value of skill, so I can select that and then click assign. And what that will do is create skill assignments for every single skill where the type value is skill. So you can see how I've quickly built up a library of skills, assigned them all to Trevor, and then I can go through and add in proficiencies, enjoyment factors, and hourly rates. So that's the ability to do that for an individual person at an individual role level. You can also do that when creating a skill as well. So I'm going to create a new language skill, and just before I do that, I'm just going to walk you through. So you'll see I've got 3 existing language skills of English, French, and Spanish. So you'll see here that English is assigned to Mick and Colin, French is assigned to Colin, and Spanish is assigned to Colin, Gabriel, and Carissa. So basically there's 4 people that have been assigned these skills. So when you're creating a new skill, you can choose to assign that to anyone that already has an existing skill with the same type. So in our example, what I'm going to do is say I'm creating a new skill for Italian, and I'm going to mark that as a language. And I'm going to set this field to true. So what that will do is run through, and any role that already has an existing skill assignment for a skill with a type value of language will also be added. They'll be assigned this new skill as well. So if I click on save there and then go through to my related, you'll see that I've already automatically assigned this skill to Mick, Colin, Carissa, and Gabriel. So now obviously I've only got type values of certification, skill, and language, but you can build out your own values. So you might have various technical types that you want to use. So you can then quickly assign a new skill to everyone that has a particular focus area within the business. Within Mission Control, you've always been able to log overtime against projects, but it was always using one ratio multiplier. So for customers who need to apply more than one overtime rate to a project, we have included 2 objects called the overtime card and the overtime rate objects. So an overtime card can have multiple overtime rates associated with it. So for example, here you'll see that I've already created an overtime card called Field Service Overtime. So if I click into that and check the related list, you'll see that I have 4 overtime rates. So one is for standard overtime, and my billable and cost overtime ratios are 1.5. You'll see my evening overtime is 2. Weekend overtime is 3, and then my public holiday overtime, I'm still only charging my client 3 times, but I'm paying my staff 3.5 times. So this overtime card with its overtime rates is now available for me to associate two projects. So I'm just going to jump over to my project here and scroll down just to take a look. So I've specified that I do charge the customer overtime and I do pay my staff overtime. But instead of using the original individual ratios for the single overtime, I'm choosing to use multiple overtime rates. And as a result of setting that field to true, I have to set a value in the overtime card field. So now this project has been configured that it can have overtime, and when it is using overtime, it's going to be using one of the overtime rates associated with this overtime card. So now when I go and log time, so I'll go for my project here. So I'm going to go and log some time here on Monday, and I'm just going to put in 1. And what I'll do is I'll double click into there. And then when I set that as overtime, because it knows it's using multiple overtime rates, it's asking me which of the rates applies to this time that's being logged. So I'm going to use my standard overtime for this one. I'll just put another one in here on another day. And I'll just indicate there that that's the evening overtime. And then I'll do one final one there on the Wednesday, just to show you how I can set another overtime. So I'm going to say that's weekend overtime. So I'm doing 3 different options here. I'm doing one that is the standard overtime, one that's evenings, and one that's weekends. So if I scroll down and save that. Okay, so now if I jump in and take a look at those individual time logs. I'll just open each one of those up individually. Okay, so I can see that my financials have been calculated. The hourly rates have been specified, but it indicates that it's overtime. So I know that this is my this is my standard overtime. So that's like my 1.5 times. So it's calculating my hour based on 1.5 times the billable value and 1.5 times the cost value. My next one was for my evening one, which was double. It was 2 times ratio. So that's obviously calculating the financials again based on the hourly rates, but based on the fact that this is overtime and it's pulling in the multiplier. And then the final one was my weekend one, which was 3 times. So that's multiplying the rates by 3 times the value. So what you'll need to do is create your overtime cards and your overtime rates, and then on the individual projects, you can specify whether you want to be using multiple overtime rates. We've made a number of enhancements to the project status report. So one example, for example, is the period of time in which you can include the time logs for. So previously it was always just the last 7 days. What we've now done is added in 2 additional fields that allow you to specify the reporting period. So you can choose from all time logs, last week, last month, or the last number of days. So you can see in this instance, I'm using last n days, and then I'm specifying how many days I want to go back. So this will include the last 90 days of time logs within my report. Now, for example, if I wanted that to just be the last 2 weeks, I could change that to 14. We've also added in the ability to include budget items. So that works in the same process as risks, time logs, and issues, and so on. You specify on the individual budget item whether you want that to be included in the weekly report. And then for issues, risks, and change requests, we've added in the ability to include custom fields. So on the individual objects, there is now a field set called the object name status report field. So we've got issue, status report fields, and then any fields that I want to include can be added into the field set. So I've got similar for the risk and similar for the change request. So now when I look at the status report, so I will show you that my time logs will span for the number of days that I've set. I'm including my budget summary, my budget items, and any custom fields that I've added in to the issue field set will display underneath the issue name. On the risks, they will display underneath the risk name, and then on the change request, they will display under there as well. So few minor modifications to provide you with a bit of further flexibility around what gets included in the report. There is also, as you're probably aware, a mission control generated footer there. You now have the ability to turn that off as well. So on the control pad within the project status report, if you don't want that footer to be included on the PDF, you can just set that setting to true, and then that will prevent that from being displayed. And just one other enhancement that we made to this was around when projects are automatically distributed. So when a project status is set to complete, or when the archived field is set to true, the generate weekly project status report field will automatically be set to false. This ensures that you're not going to be continuously sending out the project status report to project stakeholders. It provides you an automated mechanism of stopping those reports going out. We've made a few enhancements to the scheduler just to provide some customer enhancement requests. So one of them is on the hours total view. When someone previously had a holiday, it would be flagged up as grey, and 0 would be displayed. Now what happens is it's still flagged as grey to indicate that there's a holiday on that day, but the sum in that cell will be a sum of the holidays and the action hours assigned to that particular period. The other things that have been added are on the action and the project tabs. By default, the wording within the bar here would be the action name followed by the project name. You now have the ability to customize that based on any field that you want from the action object or from the project object. So there's two separate settings in the settings tab. So you're able to specify a field from the action object for the action bar text, and you can specify a field for the project bar text. So if you want to, for example, compile your own formula field that constructs the group of fields that you want to be displayed, you can do that. One thing to note that where the person is a contributor, that contributor text will always be added to the end of the bar anyway. And the other thing that we've added in is just at the request of customers, the custom filters. You previously could apply filters on the project milestone or action. You've now got the ability to apply filters on the role object as well. I added a couple of enhancements to the resource assignment wizard as well. So one of them is to be able to preset the team and skill filter parameters, and the other is to be able to mass assign contributors rather than doing it one at a time. So what I'll do is I'll just jump into the to the resource assignment wizard for this action. So you can see it's assigned to me, and there's a skill predefined on the action as well. So when I load the resource assignment wizard, you'll see that the team is automatically being populated based on master team of the action owner, and the skill is pre-populated based on the skill defined on the action. So the aim of that obviously is if you are looking for particular people that are on the same team with the same skill set, you can preload those in to save you having to do that manually. Obviously, we'll just search up speed up your search results. That is controlled via a custom setting within the settings section. So if you don't want to preset those, you simply just set that field to true, and then you can obviously just apply filters as you require. The other thing, I'm just going to clear these values off. The other thing that we've added in is the ability to mass assign contributors. So rather than me having to drag each person over manually, we've now got these select boxes, so I can come along and check the individual people that I want to be contributors, and then simply drag any one of them over, and then that will create a contributor record for each individual person. So then I can just put in the contribution, and then all three of those people will be added as contributors on my action. So we've added one enhancement to the timesheet, but it can have a fairly significant impact on how you use the timesheet and how you enter your time throughout the week. It's enabled via a setting within the timesheet settings. So you'll see here group time logs by time log type for each action. So I've got that set to true. So I'll just walk you through what that does. So you'll see at the moment I have one row for my final solution architecture action, and I haven't logged any time yet. So that's what it would start out as by default for each action at the start of the week. Now, when I go in and add some time and I double click in there, if I set a value in my time log type field and save that, you'll see what it does is adds in a second row, displaying the fact that any hours in this row, they obviously still relate to this action, but they will be pre-populated with the time log type of meetings. So if I go in and add another value in there and then select a different value, so I end up just getting an additional row for every time log type that I've used that week. So if I just save that, so you'll see now, obviously, I've got my you'll see that I've got my meetings, my travel, and I've also got a blank row as well. So I can go in and enter hours without setting a time log type, and then that will remain on that field, that row. But if I have another meeting later in the week, I don't have to double click. I don't have to enter the hours and double click to select the time log type. I can simply add it in on this row, and the time log type value of meeting will automatically be populated for me. So you're able to build that up for each individual action. So again, if I go in here and double click and specify a time log type, you'll see that the row just gets added. So just making it more efficient for me if I want to be, if I have meetings or travel across that action on various days, I can quickly enter the time for each one of those time log types without having to double click into the time log modal. So that setting can be enabled individually by each user via their own timesheet settings, or if you have overridden them by the control pad, you can configure that there as well for everybody. So there's been a number of enhancements and stability improvements applied to the role forecasting and hours distributor components. So there's I'll run through each of the enhancements separately. So to start with, when you're auto-generating a project from an opportunity, any role forecast records that relate to the opportunity will be updated to also relate to the project. That was existing functionality. What we've also added in now is if there are no role forecasts relating to the opportunity, but there are role forecasts relating to the project that is being used as the project template to auto-generate the new project, then a copy of those role forecasts will be added to the project that is generated. So there's nothing really for anyone to configure. It's just to be aware that those role forecasts will be copied over from the project template if they exist, and no specific role forecasts exist on the opportunity. Also, when you're cloning a project, you now have the option to also clone the role forecast records. It's simply just within the clone settings section of the clone page, just tick the box, and then that would clone any role forecasts that relate to the source project. We've also added in a setting on the control pad within the role allocation automation settings where you can, so you may choose to periodically delete old role allocation and role actuals. So for example, you might decide that to free up data storage, you don't want to retain anything that is more than 2 years old. From a role allocation and role actual perspective, you'll still obviously have your time logs for reporting, but you might just want to free up data storage. So what you can do is use this delete historical role allocation and role actual records setting. So you set that to true. You specify the period that you want to retain things for. So for example, if I want to delete anything that is 12 months or older, I would just set the months old value to 12. Then I would set the time for that to run. And then basically every day that process will run, and any role allocation and role actual that is older than that period of time would be deleted from the system for you. So we've also added in a number of enhancements to the role forecast. So one of them is on the, and this applies to the hours distributor as well. So this role allocation here is scheduled to start on the 23rd and finish on the 27th. If I decide that I am not going to be able to get all of those hours done on the 27th, so I'm going to take 2 from there and put them onto the 30th. Now, previously, I would have had to make that change and then go and manually update the role forecast record end date to become the 30th. Now, what it will do is if I allocate hours outside of my existing range, either before or after, it will adjust the start date or end date accordingly. The other thing around adding new role forecasts, you previously had to set the start date and the number of working days. You now have the option to, you always have to set the start date, but you have the option of either setting the work days or setting the end date. So if you don't necessarily need to, if you don't want to work out the specific working days, but you know when it needs to finish, you can just put the end date in instead. The other thing that we've got there is we've got the ability now to apply filters to the role forecast. So the forecasts and the allocations will both be filtered based on the values that we put here. So I could say I'm looking for role forecasts relating to a particular person or relating to a particular skill, or I might want to select things based on start date. So I can use the operator of less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and specify my start date. Or I could do it for the end date. So I make my filters, click the go, that will filter down the list in both the forecast and the allocation tab. And then when I'm ready, I can just clear that and I'll be reset to look at everything. I'm just going to jump over to the hours distributor to show you a couple of additional features. So this X icon has been added to each individual row, and what that will do is actually clear all of the values. So if I want to manually build up the distribution from scratch, I can click the clear button, and then that will actually reset everything to 0, and then I can just go through and manually allocate the hours as I need to. And then I can obviously keep a track of how close I am to being fully allocated. The other feature that we've got is available on each individual row and as a master field at the top here as well. So this allows you to redistribute the hours that are remaining. So for example, if the hours completed Again, so let's say this was in the past, and I had been scheduled 4 hours, but I had only done two on that day. Then obviously I need to try and take that remaining allocation and move it into the future. So I've got an accurate reflection of what work still needs to be done. So I can click this button and that will redistribute any remaining hours from previous days into the future from today onwards. So that would evenly redistribute that. So in that example, my 2 hours had been done on that day, 2 hours remaining. So that would redistribute those 2 hours across each of the working days from today through to the end of that period. The other thing you may have noticed already, we've just added a quick save button. So what that allows you to do is perform the exact same functions as the save. It just won't close the component. So if you're working through adjusting the distribution and you want to just commit those changes, but you don't want to leave the page, you can click the quick save button. That will commit all the changes and keep you on the page so you can continue working. And what we've also added in is if you do find yourself in a situation where you need to just quickly delete all of the role allocations and role actuals relating to a particular set of records, then you now have the ability to click the delete role allocations action. So that will open up a component. It will tell you what record you're on. So it will say here I'm on a project, and it's telling me that if I do delete these, it will delete 102 role allocations and any related role actuals as well. So if I delete that, I'll get confirmation on the page that it's been deleted, and I'll also get confirmation email come through to my inbox. So I'll either get an email saying it has successfully been deleted or that it failed for some reason, whether that's a validation rule or something preventing those being deleted. So this component is available on a variety of records, so you can access it from the action, from the milestone, from the project, from the holiday, and from the role forecast. So within Mission Control, there's already existing logic that keeps the status field on the project, milestone, and action up to date based on what's happening at the other levels. So for example, if I update all of my actions to complete, then the milestone that they all relate to will be marked as complete as well. So saving me having to manually keep all of those different records up to date. We've added in the same logic to enable you to keep the checklist items and actions up to date based on what's going on between those records as well. So for example, if I have two checklists on my action and I start working on one of them, then the status of the action would be changed from planned to in progress. And once all of the checklists were marked as complete, the action would be marked as complete as well. And then vice versa, if I complete the action, I can automatically update the status of all of my related checklist items as well. Now, we appreciate not everyone wants that functionality, so it can be controlled via custom settings. So that's controlled on the control pad of the Mission Control console within the Project Automation Settings section. There are two new settings. So disable auto action to checklist item status. So if you set this one, this will disable the checklist item status field being automatically updated based on the status updates on the action. And then this one will disable the action field from being automatically updated based on what's happening on the checklists. So if you do want that automation to be happening for you, you just leave these false. Otherwise, you set them to true, and that will turn that off for you. So for those customers that are using the billing event functionality within Mission Control, we've added in a variety of validation rules to ensure you're configuring your projects and milestones correctly to achieve the required billing event generation. So all of those validation rules are documented in the release notes, and we would encourage you to review them all and certainly activate them. So most of them are active by default, but there are others that aren't. So we would suggest that you review them all and make sure you activate them if you feel that you need them. to also give you some insight into whether you have any projects that are not configured the way you think they should be in order to get the billing event result that you want. We've added in some reports and pulled all those into a dashboard that you can see on the screen here. So it's really just around data integrity. Have you, if you're using standard billing rates, but you haven't entered any financial rates, we're just letting you know that. If you're using milestone billing, but you haven't set up any milestones to require invoice on completion, or where the next billing date is mismatched, or that there's time logs not approved within a billing cycle. So each one of these, ultimately, you would like each one of these reports to just show you zero. Really, it's just an exceptions dashboard that if you do have a positive number on any of these charts, it means that you should be jumping in and taking a look at those projects to understand what might have happened. So yeah, we would definitely encourage you to review the validation rules and keep an eye on this dashboard. Now, obviously, anyone who wants to use this, they could potentially be having this subscribed and emailed to them on a daily or weekly basis using the standard Salesforce subscribe functionality. Okay, hopefully you'll agree. It's packed full of awesome new functionality. We hope you enjoy that. Just a quick reminder, obviously within the release notes, it's all specified towards the end, all the new fields and validation rules that have been included as part of this release. We do strongly encourage you to review all of the fields. There are some existing fields where you need to add in some additional pick list value options. So we would encourage you to review all of that, update your page layouts, and if you're not using our out-of-the-box permission sets, you'll certainly want to review your own profiles and permissions as well. Okay, so in terms of when that's going to be available, here's the release schedule. So as I mentioned at the start of the session, it's available on the App Exchange as of the 19th of May. On the 27th of May, we'll automatically upgrade all sandbox orgs, and then on the 3rd of June, we'll automatically upgrade all production orgs. So with that said, all that is left to be said is thank you. As always, we constantly appreciate your support, and always love your suggestions and feature requests because they all help make Mission Control bigger and better for everybody. So really do appreciate your time, and thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.